What's going on, guys? My name is Wade with TechDaily, and in this video, we're going to be comparing the new iPhone 12 to the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE. If you're in the market for a new device right now and want the best value for your money from either Apple or Samsung, I think you'll probably be looking at these two phones in particular, which makes this an interesting comparison. But with that being said, there's still a ton that separates these two devices. So in this video, I'm going to go over some of the things that are the same with these two phones, all the things that are different, and hopefully by the end, you'll be able to decide which phone might be best for you. First off, let's talk about pricing and availability. The iPhone 12 right now starts at $799, and with that, you'll get 64 gigabytes of storage. For $50 more, you can get 128 gigs, and for another $100 more, $949, you'll be getting 256 gigs. And this year, the iPhone 12 comes in 5 different colors: black, white, product red, green, and blue. Samsung's S20 FE, on the other hand, starts at $699, already a bit cheaper than the iPhone, but actually there is a promotion running right now that has this phone selling for $599. And at that price, you're getting 128 gigs of storage built in. But this phone also has an SD card slot, so you can add in even more. And the S20 FE also comes in a bunch of colors: blue, purple, green, white, red, and orange. When comparing just price and storage options, you obviously get more for less money going with the S20 FE. It's the cheaper device, even without the holiday deal, so right away that might be something worth considering. And if you're interested in doing some comparison shopping of your own or want to check out the deals going on, I'll leave some links down below in the video description to where you can get these phones at their cheapest current prices. So be sure to check down there so you don't miss out. Physically, these two phones certainly look pretty different, and I think the most obvious thing that sets them apart is their size. The iPhone 12 is a 6.1 inch phone, while the S20 FE is a 6.5 inch device. Side by side, you can see that the S20 FE is mostly just taller than the iPhone 12. That's where the extra screen real estate comes from. They're about the same width, and I'll say that for me, the iPhone is fairly comfortable with one-handed use, while the S20 FE is a little more of a stretch, trying to reach the top and corners of the display. Though that S20 FE is actually one of the largest Samsung phones you can buy, both at this price point and just in general right now. So if you like big screens, you're getting pretty much as big as it gets. Now, design-wise, obviously the iPhone has that top notch for the speaker, selfie camera, and Face ID sensors, while the S20 FE rocks a more modern center hole punch camera cutout, which I think I like a little more. Across the bottom though, the bezels are a little more comparable. The S20 FE in this case has a tiny bit thicker bottom border at least, but all in all, there's no surprises here with the design. One's an iPhone, the other is a Samsung device, and at least from the front, you pretty much already know what to expect. With the body and housing, we do have some differences here too. The iPhone 12 is an all glass and aluminum build, and this is just what Apple does on all their iPhones. It's obviously a super premium design with the high-end flagship materials, and that's what's expected coming from Apple. The S20 FE has a plastic back cover that's made to sort of imitate frosted glass, though it's very obviously not, especially when you feel it in your hand. But the sides and frame of this phone are a shiny, polished metal. Also, while the iPhone has a totally flat design along the sides, the S20 FE has sort of subtle curves and a tapered edge that makes the phone feel a bit slimmer. The differences here are really just going to be a matter of personal preference more than anything else. I personally think both phones look great, and material aside, they both offer wireless charging, and they both have an IP68 water and dust rating, which is great. The only other feature differences are that the iPhone does support Apple's new MagSafe standard, which are all those magnetic accessories that attach to the back of the phone, like the cases and wallets and charger, while the S20 FE offers Samsung's wireless power share feature, which is a reverse wireless charging setup that lets you charge like earbuds or other Samsung devices, for example, from the phone. So depending on what you're into, you may find either one of those features interesting or useful. Taking a look around at everything else, on the left side, there's nothing on the S20 FE, while the iPhone has the silent switch, volume buttons, and SIM card tray. On the right, both phones have the power button, with the S20 FE also having its volume buttons here, while the iPhone 12 has a 5G antenna visible towards the bottom. Down below, both phones have a speaker and mic setup, along with the lightning port on the iPhone and USB-C charger on the S20 FE. And up top, both phones also have a secondary speaker in the earpiece for dual stereo sound. Around Around back, there's a dual camera setup on the iPhone and triple lens camera setup on the S20 FE. I'll talk more about that stuff in just a minute, but jumping back to the speaker setup, here is just a quick sample so you can get an idea of what each phone sounds like. Now, in regards to the displays, there's actually a lot more going on here beyond just the differences in size. First off, with the iPhone, its 6.1-inch screen is Apple's Super Retina XDR OLED panel that comes in at a resolution of 2532 by 1170 and packs in around 460 pixels per inch. And on the S20 FE, it offers Samsung's Super AMOLED panel at a resolution of 2400 by 1080 and packs in around 407 pixels per inch. So just objectively, spec-wise, the iPhone is a bit higher of a resolution and packs in more pixels per inch. So it should look a little sharper up close. But in general, to me, the S20 FE actually seems to have the more colorful, more pleasing looking display. With just the default color profile settings, the S20 FE appears to offer a more saturated look, which may not be as natural or accurate, but certainly most anyone would be able to notice. And actually, with the S20 FE, you do have more control over tweaking the screen colors versus the iPhone, which doesn't have a lot of options to change things. So side by side, I think you already have some things to think about with how these screens look and what you personally prefer with your viewing experience. But it actually goes beyond just resolution and color. The S20 FE also offers one big thing now that no iPhone offers at all, and that's the option to enable a 120 Hertz high refresh mode. Now, it might be a little tough to tell on camera, but with this enabled, the S20 FE feels significantly quicker and more responsive with every tap, touch, and swipe. You might be able to tell more than anything that the movements on the display more closely follow where my finger actually is touching and tapping, and every animation is faster and just more fluid. Like I said a moment ago, no iPhone right now offers any kind of high refresh rate display, not even 90 Hertz, while plenty of Android phones are now pushing 90 and 120 Hertz displays. To be totally honest, I don't know that too many everyday folks would care about this, but I do think people are at least starting to take notice. And in my opinion, once you do experience a high refresh rate display, it's kind of hard to go back to anything else. So for me personally, I do consider the 120 Hertz high refresh rate option to be a big plus on the S20 FE, especially at this price point. A couple other things to note with the screens. On the iPhone 12, Apple advertises this phone as having their new ceramic shield coating, which supposedly makes this device much tougher in the event of a drop, while the S20 FE's display is actually covered in Gorilla Glass 3, which is more scratch resistant and less impact resistant, but honestly, they're both glass, and they're both going to shatter given certain unlucky drop scenarios, so there's not a whole lot to consider there. And the iPhone 12, of course, has Face ID, which is its only unlocking method. The S20 FE also has a face unlock option, and with this, both phones unlock sort of differently. The S20 FE can just jump straight into the home screen, while the iPhone always has you slide up to unlock. So a side-by-side speed test isn't really comparable, but the S20 FE also has an in-display fingerprint reader, which is not only plenty fast and accurate, it's certainly comparable to any flagship reader out right now, but nowadays, given everything that's going on, it might just be the more convenient unlocking method, and it's nice to at least have the choice of a fingerprint sensor on that phone. Performance-wise, I think everyone sort of understands that we're basically comparing apples to oranges here as far as the internal specs and the operating systems, but I'll still offer up some info and some side-by-side tests and my opinion here so you can sort of understand what we're working with. The iPhone, of course, packs Apple's fastest, newest, most powerful chipset, the A14 Bionic, along with 4 gigabytes of RAM. The specs here don't really mean much since Apple puts so much effort into just optimizing their phones with iOS, but at least you know what's inside. With the S20 FE, interestingly enough, this phone also has basically the newest, most up-to-date flagship Android specs. It's got the Snapdragon 865 processor and Adreno 650 GPU, and the choice of either 6 or 8 gigs of RAM. And for an Android phone at this price point, I actually think that's a great combination. The S20 FE ships with Android 10 and has Samsung's One UI 2.5 update right now, which honestly has made things pretty smooth. Samsung has done a nice job, particularly this year with its Android optimization, and there's still some great updates to come with this phone soon. But you can see that iOS is just much more optimized on the iPhone. Default apps load almost instantaneously. There's definitely a noticeable difference, and this just stems, like I said, from how much control Apple has over its OS. I think what we're seeing here should just come as no surprise. Fortunately, the difference, while noticeable, doesn't really impact day-to-day use, since we're talking like fractions of a second. But you can at least see how things launch and load. With third-party apps, it's a similar story. Most everything is just going to be faster on the iPhone, whether it's simple little games or more graphics-heavy stuff. Again, what we're talking about here mainly is just usually a fraction of a second in load times, or a couple seconds, if that. It's not really a huge difference, and it's certainly not going to drastically impact how you use the phones or what the phones are even capable of. More than anything, it's just the iPhone is better optimized. Both phones are plenty powerful and super capable, and for all intents and purposes, they are 2020 flagship devices in their respective fields, and you can't go wrong with either. Now, the S20 FE, like I mentioned earlier, has the advantage of more built-in storage for less money and an SD card option as well, which could come in handy. All in all, with this, it's really just going to come down to whether you personally like iOS or Android. Now, with battery capacity and longevity, there's certainly more things to consider here. The iPhone 12 has just a 2815 milliamp battery inside, while the S20 FE packs in a much larger 4500 capacity battery. But the specs don't really tell the whole tale. For example, when I started filming this video, these phones both had 100% capacity, and you can see the S20 FE actually has slightly less battery remaining right now, even though the phones have done pretty much the same thing. And again, I think what it's just going to come down to is just the fact that Apple has control over everything. So they've made the processor and iOS, for example, be as compatible as possible with the smaller battery, while the S20 FE, I think, has more factors to consider that are out of Samsung's control when it comes to battery life and usage. In real world use though, I've found the iPhone 12 can push through more than 8 hours of screen on time on a single charge. My S20 FE can usually make it 10 hours or more, but really it's just going to come down to what you use your phone for throughout the day. The main point here is just that the battery capacity alone isn't really worth considering. Inside the box though, the iPhone 12 ships with just a Lightning to USB cable. There's no charging brick at all, and if you want the fastest charging speeds, you'll need to go out and get a 20-watt USB-C brick if you don't already have one. Interestingly enough though, while the S20 FE at least comes with a charger in the package, this one that's included isn't the fastest one that this phone supports. It's sort of a cheap little slow old one. You'd need to go out and get Samsung's fast charger to make the most out of charging this phone. So basically both Samsung and Apple just cheaped out here with the included accessories in sort of different ways. Finally, in regards to the cameras, we've got a lot to consider here too. Around back, the iPhone 12 has a dual lens setup with the main shooter and ultra-wide lens, while the S20 FE has a triple lens setup consisting of a main shooter and ultra-wide as well, and an additional telephoto lens. The selfie cameras are also drastically different, at least spec-wise. The iPhone has a 12 megapixel lens up front, while the S20 FE has a 32 megapixel selfie camera. But just like with everything else, specs aren't everything. Now, I do already have a dedicated camera comparison video with these two phones that I definitely recommend you check out if you're really interested. It's certainly much more than I could ever include in this video. In general though, just for everyday shooting, I still consider the iPhone to be the better option for selfies, daytime shots, low light shots, and for video as well, while the S20 FE oftentimes offers a better wide angle shot and has far more capabilities zooming wise with its dedicated telephoto lens, of course, like up to 30 times digital zoom, for example, and 3 times optical using the lens. With the iPhone 12, things even out a bit this year now that this phone can shoot night mode shots with all the lenses, so that's great. And capability wise, I think both phones offer nearly the same suite of options, though the iPhone 12 offers Dolby Vision HDR support, for example, which the S20 FE does not. All in all, I would still almost always prefer the iPhone for pictures and for video just in general, but like I said, be sure to check out my dedicated camera comparison video to really get an in-depth breakdown of some real-world shots so you can see what these phones can do. So all in all, I actually think this is kind of a tough comparison. The iPhone, while quite a bit more expensive, does offer some advantages. iOS obviously is a big plus if you're already invested in Apple's ecosystem. I think the camera capabilities are generally better, and it's a nicer built phone too with more premium materials, but that 120 Hz display on the S20 FE is super nice. You're getting a way better deal too as far as pricing and storage and SD card expansion as well. It's certainly a tough choice, but what do you guys think? Which phone would you prefer? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to know your thoughts, of course. But hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. Be sure to follow TechDaily on Twitter and subscribe to the TechDaily YouTube channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys later.